First and foremost, I'm going to get us started today and just welcome everybody. Hello, welcome. So glad everybody's here. Before we begin, I just want to say how great it is to see everybody in this room. We've got students, we have faculty, we have staff, we have so many people, especially our community members that have joined us today. So I really appreciate all of you for taking time out of your day to be with us. It's just wonderful to see you. First and foremost, as we begin our program, I want to take a moment to recognize and thank many individuals in the offices who helped make today possible. Because it takes a team, right? It's not just me, it's a team. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge those team members. First, I would like to thank the Office of the President, and especially President Armacost and First Lady Armacost, who's here today. Thank you so much for being here and your support for our event. Also, I'd like to thank the Office of the Provost for their continued support of events like this across our campus. And a special thank you goes out to the Office of Community Belonging, led by Dr. Tom Bailey, for sponsoring our speaker today, Chris Ruden. Additionally, I would like to take time to thank the College of Education and Human Development, and Dean Whitty is also present, and I would like to say thank you today as well to our Dean for providing and supporting your wonderful lunch. So I hope you enjoy all the brownies and cookies. I know the pasta's good and salad's great, but brownies are so much better. I would also like to extend a sincere thanks to my phenomenal Memorial Union staff for providing this beautiful space, but also for keeping me sane over the last couple of days. It's been interesting. So thanks to Tyler and Matt in the back and to all of our staff here for really arranging a gorgeous space. On a personal note, I would like to thank a couple of people, and I don't know where Tisha Lopez is. I think she's in the very back, but Tisha kept me sane and also coordinated a lot of moving parts during this event in planning it, as well as Miss Christy Embry. Christy is, I think, back in the office working on accessibility, I believe, with some of us faculty today, but I wanted to say thank you to her. She spent time with me over the weekend helping set up the beautiful posters and a lot of the things that you see here too. So I just wanted to say a shout out to both of them. It truly takes a team, and a team like mine, I'm very fortunate to have, and also such dedicated colleagues and partners like you here at UND. Before we move to our speaker, I want to also mention that, unfortunately, and what is tough for me to say today, as you will see, you see a Zoom behind me. Mr. Chris Ruden got stuck in our weather, and so in trying to get that message out, I did that as best and quickly as I could, but Chris got stuck with all the snow, and so he is going to join us live from Zoom, from his home in Florida, and so he has pivoted and shifted to be able to do that today. But as we do that today, I also want to tie that back to disability and to self-care. If you'll look around your table, all too often, there are so many times that we don't get together. We stay in our offices, we eat lunch at our desk, and we never take the time to get together. Self-care is part of what we need to do, both for our mental health, but every day to make sure that we are successful. And so I want to throw that in a little bit today. And so enjoy the time. Enjoy the time that you're here, enjoy the food, but also enjoy the people that are around you, because it makes such a difference every day. Now, I guess I'll jump into Chris because he's waiting on me to go ahead and move forward. So Chris is an amputee. He's a type 1 diabetic, a record holder powerlifter, keynote speaker, and disabled model who's been featured on the Rocks television show, The Titan Games. After experiencing stigma, mental health challenges, and barriers associated with disability, Chris transformed those challenges into opportunities. Through his bionic arm, diabetes technology, and his message of creating his world and our world without limits, Chris shares a powerful insight about resilience, identity, and redefining what it is possible. We are grateful for him joining us today. And Chris, thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Ew, look at his hand. That's disgusting. Look at his arm. That's so gross. That's so nasty. Honestly, that's disgusting. You should just you can't play with us. You're a monster. That's so disgusting. Honestly, you should just kill yourself. That was Patrick, one of the many kids who made fun of me for something I couldn't control, the way I was born. My entire life, I felt like I had underwear on the outside of my pants, and there was nothing I could do about it. So if you are staring at my bright, tidy whities, my eyes are up here, please. Thank you very much. My name is Chris Ruden. I'm a world record holding powerlifter, motivational speaker, disabled model, the first type 1 diabetic amputee to walk the runway in New York Fashion Week, and a donut connoisseur. My entire life, I felt broken. I felt like I had these underwear on the outside of my pants. So today, yes, we're talking about disability and inclusion, but we're really talking about creating your world without limits and what that looks like. Because I truly believe barriers, not bodies, create disadvantage. So it's my job, it's our job to walk away from today understanding how can we make the world a better place? How can we limit those biases and those narratives that get put on people like myself, maybe like you, to understand that disability does not mean broken and that there is a world without limits if we change the world as it is right now. So I'm doing that through three simple steps: changing our attitude and how we view the problem, our perspective, and what we choose to do with it. And then most importantly, our power of choice and how we move forward. Some of the synonyms for disability are weak or broken or useless or helpless or less than. Can you imagine being labeled less than or broken as a kid, as an adult, as just a human being? I never asked for this disability, but my entire life I felt like a monster. Every day in middle school, I was made fun of for something I couldn't control. And I'll never forget lying to my mom every single day. My mom was a nurse, and she every day would ask me, like, "Hey, how was your day, honey?" And it was awful. But I lied to her every single day. And I said, "It was great, mom. It was great." I was embarrassed that my mom had a kid that looked like me, that she gave birth to a monster. And she spent all of her time working two jobs to take care of a kid who didn't deserve to be here. I was in middle school, and there was the prettiest girl in my middle school. To be fair, there was like four girls in my middle school. So, prettiest girl, her name was Crystal. And I'll never forget. I'm a 12-year-old boy. I have no clue what I'm doing. And I finally worked up the courage to talk to this girl named Crystal. I go up to her desk, and all my friends started laughing. I'm like, "Stop, guys. You're going to mess this up. You're going to mess this up." I turn around, and Crystal is making fun of my hand with the stapler, calling me clawboy in front of the whole class. She humiliated me. And I acted like that didn't hurt me, but it killed me. Every day I lied to my mom, but that day was very different. I'll never forget ripping the door open and throwing my backpack across the floor, tears streaming down my face. I go to the bathroom and I look at myself in the mirror and I just look and I'm saying to myself, "You are a monster. You're disgusting. You don't deserve to be here." And like every other day, my mom asked, "Hey, honey, how was your day?" And I lost it. I usually lied to my mom, but that day I didn't. I said, "Mom, why did you do this to me? Why did you make me like this? You help all these other people. You're a nurse. You help everyone else, but you couldn't even help your own son. How could you do this to me? You should have never had me." She said something that no parent should ever have to say to their kid. She broke down and she cried and she could barely utter the words, "I'm sorry." It was that moment that I knew I never wanted to see my mom like that again. I never wanted to see myself in that situation again. And while I couldn't change my disability, I knew I had a responsibility to do something, and not just a responsibility, but a response ability. I knew that I had some sort of ability to respond differently. I didn't know what that would look like, but I also didn't know that from that moment, I would spend the next 17 years hiding my disability, not just from people I don't know, but from people I do know, and including myself. I stopped hiding my disability at 27 years old. I kept it in a pocket and in a glove for almost 20 years. 20 years, to the point where the partner I was with at the time for 4 years never saw my hand, and we lived together and we had a home together. I hid from everyone, including myself. I wouldn't go to school if I didn't have a glove to cover my hand. If I couldn't find that glove, I wouldn't go to school. And the reason I'm talking about that is it's easy to say, well, oh, it's not that big a deal. It's not that big of an issue. Nothing is worse than walking around existing in the body I was born with, looking at every reflection and waiting for people to turn their head around as soon as they pass me, knowing that it's going to happen, knowing that the kid is going to say something, the adult is going to look, or the adult is going to pretend like it doesn't exist. Not to mention, in the disabled world, I was not disabled enough to be missing an entire leg above the knee, but too disabled to be accepted into the normal world. I felt so out of place and so stuck based on stories that society created for me. Now, whether you have a disability or not, maybe you know what it's like to be in a room full of people and still feel completely alone. No one really knows the battles everyone else faces in the confines of their own mind. And the struggles that are stuck in the floorboards of our minds, we have to constantly mask. It feels like we can't even explain because no one would understand, no one would get it. But for me, I never wanted my mom to experience that again. So I said, how could I make this differently? How could I change my attitude around this subject? What could I do? And if I had to do something, maybe I don't have to be this broken, useless, helpless kid. Maybe there's a way. I didn't know the answer, but I asked myself, like, what could I do to change this situation? It's easy to want to use this toxic positivity. And while I might seem like a motivational speaker, that's not me. If I'm standing in a burning building, I'm not going to chant positive affirmations. I'm going to get the hell out. I'm more of what's called like a cynical realist, you know? I ask myself, is this going to help me or hurt me? And that's what I invite you to take away from today is when we get a flat tire, what's the first thing we do? We set the car on fire, right? That's normally we self-sabotage and we tell ourselves this story from a situation that we take something that's not favorable and we tend to make it worse. We do it with our diets, you know, we say, oh, I messed up my diet on Monday. I have to start next Monday. You know, I messed up my diet with one little meal, so I'm going to go to an all-you-can-eat buffet. We have the flat tire and we set the car on fire. And that's what I did. I had a few negative experiences around the idea of disability, and that false narrative that I experienced with other people became a fact. And unfortunately, not all feelings are facts. And you can't fix what you're not willing to face. Everyone has that thing, or those things, maybe if you're like me, that we know we need to deal with, but we put it off. We say, yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah, I'll change it. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. A small deal turns into a big deal over time. And for me, it was society's label of disabled means broken. And I had to ask myself, am I stuck to this feeling of being broken because society deemed me broken and I had no input on this whatsoever? We look around, when we think of disability, what do you think? Maybe a blue parking spot, blue parking permit. Maybe you think needing help. How many of us might double take if you saw a person in a wheelchair stand up? Our first thing to go to, oh, fraud, scam, faker. But we don't know that there's things that are part-time ambulatory wheelchair users. We are so quick to judge everyone else, and we're so quick to ask that people don't judge us. And to put out in the world what we want to receive, that's the whole goal of today. is to create a world without limits. It starts with us not creating limits for everyone else. When is the last time you told yourself a story that you knew were true? You know, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to UND because of the snow, and I was very excited to do a lot of in-person activities that might have made people a little bit uncomfortable in the best way possible. But I'll ask you, if everyone could raise your hand as high as possible, and I can see you, so you have to do it. Yes, you in the blue. Perfect. Thank you so much. Now raise it a little bit higher, a little bit higher. Perfect. Everyone is a liar in the audience. That's good to know, UND. All of you are liars. That's great. And this is what we do. This is what we do. We tell ourselves, I did everything. But in reality, you did a little bit. I gave it my all. You gave it your some. Because when I asked you to go as high as possible, you still kept some in the tank. Why? When I asked you to go a little bit higher, you could. We do this all the time in our lives. It's like, I tried everything. I just couldn't do it. You say, yeah, I tried everything. You tried 3 things and you half-assed 2 of them. You tried everything. You tried some things. Oh, I did the diet thing and it didn't work. You didn't eat carbs for 2 hours. You know, like we can't say I did everything when in reality, we have to be honest. Because that dishonesty of I tried everything, if you didn't try everything, you'll believe that you did. A story repeated over time becomes fact, even though that's not true. Another exercise for everyone. This really requires your input, so you have to do this, okay? If everyone could say the word silk 5 times fast. Ready? And go. Silk, 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 silk. What do cows drink? Cows drink water. So if anyone said milk, we're just gonna UND, you guys are good. You guys are good. We're good. We're good. There's always that one person like, well, technically they do drink milk at a certain. I don't want to talk to you. We condition ourselves to believe things that we repeat. So silk, milk, it rhymes. It's easy to say it, but in reality, cows just drink water. If you can condition yourself with a simple word trick like that, what have you conditioned yourself as of late? You've conditioned yourself that maybe people with disabilities always need help, or people with disabilities are supposed to be motivational posters on a wall. Maybe you've convinced yourself that you're stuck in life and that's just how it's supposed to be. Maybe you're convinced that you should be further along in life than you are. Regardless of what you've convinced yourself, it doesn't make it true. It doesn't matter what's happened in the past. It matters what you choose to do now. Consider this. Are you a morning person or a night person? Some would say morning, some would say night. And I would say both are incorrect because that's not who you are. It's what you do. If you wanted to become a night person, you would go to sleep later. And if you want to become a morning person, you would wake up earlier. Doesn't mean you would want to, but you could become that. We have to separate habit from identity because you are not a morning person. You are a person who wakes up early. When we separate habit from identity, we give ourselves a chance to grow and to change. But if you label yourself, oh, I'm just lazy. I'm lazy. No. You're not lazy. Maybe you have been lazy in the past, which is a past, habit, but that's not who you are. It's what you did. And it's not what you have to do moving forward. We have to give ourselves room to grow. But unfortunately for me, I never gave myself that option because I decided that I was broken. I decided that I was the disabled kid. I decided that I needed to hide my hand to be accepted or to ever be loved, which I doubted could ever happen ever because I was broken. I told myself, I am broken. It didn't mean it was true, but I truly believed it was. Now, shit is going to go wrong, okay? And I know Leanne brought me in to be motivational and to be positive, so let me change that, okay? I'm positive shit is going to go wrong. It is. It's going to. It happens. It is very much a real thing in our lives. But the question is, how can we start adjusting our attitude so that our altitude can match that? You will always be limited in your growth if your attitude matches the worst parts of your life. I'm not saying to be toxically positive and think everything is good, because everything is not good, but everything is not bad either. And what happens if we removed the good or bad label and we started changing our perspective to effective or ineffective. You very well know if a decision is going to help you or hold you back, regardless of how petty you are. And I'm a petty person, let me tell you. I'm the most competitive and petty person in the world. I could be walking next to a person, they don't know me, we're not in a race, but I'm winning. I am so competitive, and I just need things to go. I want to control things so bad. But you have to remind yourself that that perspective shift needs to happen if you ever want a chance to improve your situation. And we can always improve what happens to us or how we react to what happens to us. I quickly found out that I couldn't change my disability by hiding it, but I felt the need to. Maybe because of what people stared and said, maybe because all of the doubt, but I took it as an opportunity to change my perspective, and I think that's very important to think about. Some of you might be familiar with these kind of things, these old school glasses, these 3D glasses, blue and red, and turns everything blue and red. And I can probably put this up to the screen and you can see me through that blue or see me through that red. Now, obviously, it's pretty obvious that you have these things on, and maybe you're like me. If you wear sunglasses, makes everything great, and then after a while, you do this thing where you lose your sunglasses, but in reality, they're on your head because your eyes adjust to the glasses over time, right? And then you take the glasses off and you say, wow, like, oh, everything is so much brighter. We often don't know the lenses that we look through, and that shapes the stories and narratives and facts that we tell ourselves. If you're raised to believe a certain thing, if you never question that, you believe that as fact and you repeat it silk, 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 silk over time, everything looks like milk. Okay? We often forget that we all have lenses that we look at life through. Pre-existing injuries, maybe it's past experiences, maybe it's education, maybe it's your upbringing or your reaction to certain scenarios. That's why two people in the same household can have completely different philosophies and completely different outcomes in life. Regardless, good, bad, effective, ineffective, we all have lenses that we see things through. When you see me, you probably told yourself a story. Oh, swoopy hair, beard, tattoos, wears shirts that are way too small, definitely douchebag, Who knows what story you tell yourself about me, but I can't change that because your opinion is not my responsibility, just like anyone else's opinion is not your responsibility. But two, I don't really watch sports, I don't drink beer, and one of my first passions was cake decorating. So like you would never get that from seeing a person who has that because that lens has taught you certain things mean certain things. Big question for you. What is something that if you were wrong about would change everything? What is something that if you were wrong about would change everything? I told myself to fit in, I had to disappear. I had to disappear to the shadows. I had to wear long sleeves. And in Florida, unlike out there by UND, it is always 90 degrees. It's always hot. I am the sweatiest person in the world. I always look like I'm about to steal something. And I didn't steal anything, but I'm that sweaty. I just look nervous all the time. I tried to disappear. Okay. And I told myself that's the only way people would accept me is if I tried to blend in, if I tried to not be seen as disabled, which is why I hid my hand for so long, 20 years. Okay. I decided to start questioning loosely, do I need to hide my hand? And I was like, of course I do. Of course I do. How many of us say answers to questions that we answer so quickly, we're so sure? This might start some fights, especially if you have some relationships, but it could be the best advice you've ever heard. Just because you are certain doesn't mean you're right. I was certain that I needed to hide my hand, but I wasn't right. I started taking on competition as I was still struggling hiding my hand. I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and autoimmune disease at 19 years old. My mom, their nurse, crying over me. And I just felt like there's no way I can be this broken, useless, helpless kid and also have diabetes. Like this is a joke at this point, and I took that as an opportunity where I was like, what can I do with this? Like I have to be able to do something. Start reaching out to local communities, and connection is everything. The people you're next to right now, whether you know them well or you don't know them at all, you should, because you are one or two connections away from a completely different life. I reached out to other type 1 diabetics, and that resulted in my first ever keynote speech. First ever keynote speech. I was a major in political science and criminal justice because I loved arguing with people. Found out that was a bad reason to try and become a lawyer. I ended up going to the exercise science department, and I loved the art of building muscle and performance. Mostly because, again, I'm petty and I was told that I couldn't. I'm a one-handed guy living in a two-handed world. I was told that I couldn't, and I developed this watch me mentality. So in doing that, I started to question, like, what could I do with where I'm at? Changing that perspective. You know, does the thorn bush have roses, or does the rose bush have thorns? And that mindset kind of gave me an alternate reality, because I was like, well, if I stopped operating in this is what it is, certainty, and started operating with curiosity, how might I? How could I? What could I do with where I'm at right now to make it better? Or more my style, how can I make this suck a little bit less? We all know we do things that make situations worse, not neutral or better. It's almost like we order a fancy meal from a restaurant. We dump a pound of salt on it and complain that the meal doesn't taste good. Easier said than done, right? Yes, but better done than said. Everything is easier said than done, but at a certain point, we have to change our perspective to say, I should do it anyways. I should not make it worse anyways. I should attempt to make it better anyways. If you were the main character in your story, your life, why are you voting on the main character's downfall by making decisions you know would hurt you? It's easy for me to argue, well, I didn't know that was going to hurt me when I decided to hide my hand. I didn't know that was going to hurt me when I decided to limit myself. If you gave that advice to someone you love, you would never tell them to do what you did. We're so great at giving other people advice, people we care about, people we love, but we would never give that same advice to ourselves. So I ask you, in changing your perspective, if someone you care about, someone you love, was going through the exact same thing you're going through, what advice will you give them? And how different is that from the advice you're giving yourself? That was the perspective I needed, because then I took the gym as an opportunity to attempt. I wanted to be a bodybuilder so bad. I love the idea of building muscle. I was a tiny little kid in school. And in the process, I met someone who introduced me to powerlifting, which is just lifting really heavy weight. And I'm a one-handed guy living in a two-handed world, so I can't really lift weights. I'm all rotated weird, and it was a struggle. I ended up coming up with this hook design that could wrap around the bar, and I was able to do 135 pounds. And that mindset crept back in. I was like, yeah, but there's no way I could go anymore. That was a fact, right? There's no way I could go anymore. Is that true? When you find yourself saying certainties, like this is going to happen, ask yourself, is that true? If it weren't true, what would it look like? How could I instead of I can't? Or how might I instead of this definitely won't work? If it did work, what would that look like? So I switched it quickly. And I said, well, I would have to tighten it a little bit more. So 135 pounds turned into 215 pounds, 225 pounds. And it started sliding. So I was like, well, I can't anymore. But if I had to, how could I? I used another wrap to go around that. 225 turned into 315, turned into 405 pounds, 585 pounds. As a guy with one arm, I did my first ever powerlifting competition, and I won against what we call normies, able-bodied people, And then I won 7 other competitions from there. And then I got greedy. I did a state competition. I did 605 pounds, which is the best I've ever done. That was a 10 out of 10 in intensity. I was like, yeah. And sometimes we know we bite off more than we can chew. So 605 pounds was my limit. Everyone cheered, but I was like, I need more. I need more. So I tried to do 625 pounds. I knew I couldn't, but I tried it anyways. And as I stood up with the weight, I got about halfway up to my knees. I started shaking. I started like twerking, like Cardi B, some sort of music video, and like all kinds of weird stuff. I hope all you guys get weird ads now that I said that on your Facebook and Instagram. I'm twerking, shaking, and I dropped the weight in front of 50, 75 people. And all of those feelings came back of not being good enough, being broken, useless, helpless, less than. It all came rushing back in my mind. And that negative mindset came back and said, see, you're not capable. This isn't possible. You're not good enough. It's because you're disabled. What were you thinking? Why did you even try? Took me right back to being in that middle school moment of like humiliation, you know? And I had to forcibly get myself out of that to understand that I didn't fail for trying. Because in reality, like failing is a verb. It's like stubbing your toe, it happens. But failure is a noun, it's an identity, it's a place we stay. So it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fumble. It's okay to look dumb. If anything, the key to succeeding in almost any avenue of life is being willing to look dumb in public. When in reality, the only person you look dumb to is yourself, which that's a fabricated story. Because at the end of the day, I attempted a weight and I didn't get the weight. The facts of the situation where I attempted a heavy weight and I didn't get it. Every other bit of that story was something I chose to add. Extra salt on something that's already seasoned well. So when things like that happen in life, you have to ask yourself, is this the facts of the situation? Are these the facts? Or am I adding to the facts of this story to paint myself in a negative way? And that's what I did the majority of my life. But I decided to not stop there. Okay? I decided to really push past that and say, what could I accomplish? What could I accomplish if I didn't allow that inner narrative to limit me? And not in this motivational, inspirational way, but like, how far could I push this? So I continued training. I continued trying. And I took that as an opportunity to, you know, if I missed 615, 620 pounds in front of 50 people, why not attempt 675 pounds in front of 10,000 people at the Arnold Sports Festival, the largest sports festival in the world? And that's what I decided to use my power of choice to attempt something that originally I thought was never possible. See, people see people with disabilities and they assume a lack of ability. They assume that because I have this disability, so many people would say, wow, I can't believe you're that strong. I couldn't even do that. You don't look disabled to me. I've had people say that because I have muscles, because I'm strong. You don't look disabled to me. And I'm like, that's wild because you don't look dumb to me either. But now we're both confused. We have to remember that disability doesn't have a look. Ability doesn't have a look. On my best days, you would think there is no disability present. And on my worst days, you're like, wow, I really feel sorry for him. But that is the human experience of life. To shrink the definition of normal to a certain function that you have said is good or bad is to limit the human experience. You would only be so lucky to become disabled, to live long enough to experience disability, because we are all only temporarily able-bodied. Able-bodied is a temporary state of privilege, and whether that's from acquired injury or longevity of life, or for me, birth. Disability is a normal part of the human experience. And for so long, I told myself that it wasn't, because it's not what I saw in society. I saw people in society, you have to be a 6'4" king that had abs and blue eyes, and none of those qualities are bad. But I told myself, if I wasn't something that I'm not, I'll never be good enough, which kept me stuck. And it kept me in the cycle of, I can never be something I'm not, so I'll never be good enough. How many of us find ourselves in those situations where you're like, yeah, but anything good happens to you. Yeah, but it's not as good as I want. Yeah, but I should be farther along in life. Yeah, but I should be more successful. Yeah, but I should be smarter. Yeah, but who decides the level that you should be? Who says more is needed? Society or you or me? We've created conditions for ourselves that have no weight, but we base our entire self-worth off of that weight. And it's so crazy because the first sign of struggle, the first sign of hardship, we decrease our value. You know, if we go through something traumatic or something hard, um, whether someone breaks up with us or someone we don't get that job we want, or we're scared of what's going to happen after we graduate, we tell ourselves our value decreases because of the things that happen to us. And it's so easy to get in that mindset. I know I did the majority of my life. But question for you, would anyone take $100 bill from me? Probably. You probably would gladly take that $100 bill. Now, would you take that $100 bill if I crumbled it up a little bit? Would you still take that if I offered it to you for free? Maybe. Okay. So we got some struggling students here. I get that. Normal. That's cool. Now, here's the big question. If I crumpled it up and I threw it on the ground and I stepped on it and I called it a bunch of bad names and I did all this to this $100 bill and it is crumpled. It is crumpled and I just leave it there. Would you still take that $100 bill? Why? Because somehow this green rectangle doesn't lose its value when things happen to it. Yet you, who is so much more valuable than a green rectangle, lose your value on the first sight of struggle or hardship? Why are we so willing to keep the value of a $100 bill, but not ourselves when we go through things? And that's a question I wrestled my whole life because I never understood. I thought my life wasn't worth it. I thought because I was broken and useless and helpless in this definition of disability, I wasn't worth that $100 bill status. I remember seeing a very interesting situation where someone asked, you know, would you accept $10 million? Of course, everyone would. I would imagine you would accept that with open arms. Would you accept $10 million? The only caveat is you die tomorrow. No, of course not. Who would take? No one would take that. So you're telling me your life, even just tomorrow, is worth $10 million. Your value is ever present, but somehow, whether it's society or that internal narrative, has convinced us that it's not worth it. But in reality, we know it is. Deep down in it, we know it is. And it's that power to choose that we have to make that conscious choice to go from feeling broken or feeling useless or feeling stuck to saying, how could I change this? Yes, it starts with like attitude, but changing your perspective and taking those lenses off is so important. But ultimately, no amount of information can fix a need to act, a need to do something and put yourself out there. No amount of thinking can fix overthinking. And trust me, I'm the doom thinker, spiral thinking. I get that. But no amount of thinking can fix where action needs to happen. And for me, action needed to happen because I never want to see my mom like that. I never wanted to experience that. I wanted people to see me as some sort of mentor. And I could ask you, when did you decide to become a mentor? Probably you might think, I'm not a mentor. You decided to become a mentor the day you were born, whether it's by choice or not. Because people look at you and think one of two things. Wow, that person handles this incredibly. I want to be just like that. Or wow, that person doesn't handle that well. I don't want to do that. Unfortunately and fortunately, everyone is a lighthouse for people around them. The question is, are you leading them to the shore or to the rocks? You see, I got invited to the Arnold Sports Festival, and I was very fortunate that in this whole process, I stopped hiding my hand. Stopped hiding my hand. And I got a call from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which I thought was fake. I almost didn't accept it. And he invited me to be on this TV show, which was incredible. Hundreds of thousands of people applied. I ended up making the cut, about 15 guys total. I was on all the billboards and buses. As a person who hid my hand my whole life, seeing myself everywhere, leading with the disability, it was a really incredible experience. But all of that led to this moment of I wanted to break a world record, 675 pounds in front of thousands of people. I'll never forget going in front of this arena of people at this convention center. I was the smallest guy there. I have an insulin pump hanging out my stringer. People wondering if that's the iPhone 19. I have one arm, one hand, and people are just seeing all the weight, 675 pounds. They're like, what is this guy doing? Maybe he's just going to clean it or something. And as I approached that bar and I grabbed it, I saw the face I saw my entire life: doubt, embarrassment. Everyone just looked at me like, what is this guy doing? Disabled, like whatever. As I grabbed that weight, 675 pounds, and I started to stand up, it got to my knees again and it started to shake. I started to do the twerking thing. I'm like, no, no, no. And as I stood up with 675 pounds and locked it out, breaking that world record, I saw everyone going crazy, cheering. It was insane to see, from doubt to just like support. Everyone supports you when you win. But everything went black. And all I could think about was my mom hugging me and crying and saying, I'm sorry. And I'll never forget what I said back to her. I said, it's okay, Mom. I'll figure something out. I figured it out. It was never my disability or my diabetes. It was never that I was broken or useless. It was none of that. It was the story I told myself, keeping myself stuck. Because yes, life was extremely hard and I still deal with those things. There's no finish line to mental health. There's no finish line to struggle. There's always going to be valleys and peaks. But I made it so much worse by telling myself this story of limitation, when in reality, I just needed to adapt a little bit. There's no universal fix to an individual problem. Unfortunately, I was so busy trying to do what everyone else did, and it just didn't work for me. Having my mind thinks differently, my body works differently, but I still tried to do what everyone else did. I tried to do what I was told I should. And there's that quote that's often misattributed to Albert Einstein. If you judge a fish's ability to climb a tree, it'll grow up its entire life thinking it's stupid. I judge my ability to use both hands to equate to my worth, when in reality, I just needed to adapt. And by adapting, I was able to find a way. So I'm going to quickly share, just so you can see, I hope this video comes through well. We're going to see this. One second. Let's see if this works here. Can everyone see this? Give me a high thumbs up so I can see in the little corner. Everyone can see. Perfect. Wow, everyone listens so well. So just so you understand, before I close this out and take questions, you can see my hand. You can see the x-ray. The reason I'm showing this x-ray, because yes, you see my hand, but the most important part, if you can see in the top left corner, I actually have a glove on over my hand. I was so embarrassed because of what society has labeled me a broken that I kept a glove on even for an x-ray. I knew that it was going to see through the glove, but mentally, I was so broken that I kept a glove on. That if I went in the pool, I went in the pool with it. I would go to sleep with the glove on in my own home. I'll never forget going in the pool and going to sleep with a wet glove because I refused to let my girlfriend of 4 years see my hand. That's how serious this was. And going from a skinny kid who's never doing this to I built a body, yes, the physique, but with the disability, with diabetes. And yes, that's amazing to break world records, to get on a TV show. Yes, that's cool. But one of the coolest things was being able to change my mindset in a way to see my world without limits. One of the best things I've ever done was being able to go to Walmart without hiding my hand. Not even Target, y'all. Walmart. So my standards were real, real, real low. Okay. That was like my biggest goal. So I want to share this with you. This was one of the videos after I broke the record. So you can see, hopefully it's not too loud. So while that was awesome, it was a really cool moment. I had to cut out the actual audio because I had a lot of curse words, and that would have just been it would have pushed me over my limit that I was allotted for today. But this is what it means to become. You teach best what you need to learn most. I took on this opportunity to coach other kids with disabilities and to work with other people who feel like their life was limited. I took this opportunity to make the most of my ability. I was fortunate to build hundreds of thousands of followers across platforms because I decided to share my story. Being in People magazine, yes, is amazing, but this is what it's all about. This was Rory, and he came to us defeated and broken. He was like, how could I ever see value in myself? I can't even tie my own shoes. How could I ever see value in myself? Who would ever love me? I can't even tie my own shoes. We did a camp for all kids with disabilities. And over the course of 7 days, I was able to build with him something that set a record in our camp. Oh, wait, good. One, good. Again. Come on. Up. Two. Perfect. Come on, don't quit. Let's go. All the way down. Up. Three. Up, 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 up. Good job. And that's actually these. Thank you. I appreciate it. That means so much to me. My mentors will always be the kids that I've encountered and worked with, and helping these kids to not go through what I went through. And that I so encourage that people look at you. People look at you, they look to you. And sometimes it can feel like there's a lot of pressure. Like, I don't want to be a mentor. I don't want to be a role model. And yeah, I don't want to have a disability. I don't want to be, this person who feels like I have to perform all the time, and I'm not. But I do recognize the position I'm in, and I recognize the position you're in. People will see you. They will see your decisions. And knowing that, it helps me to make just a slightly better decision towards a slightly better world, and not better in the sense of like, wow, this is beautiful, rainbows and sunshine. Better in the sense of these kids, similar to me, never had a shot in a world that excluded them. But you, me, we can create an environment where they see themselves as possible. They see that there's a way. They see that there's not the limits that I grew up with. They have hope, and that, I think, a little bit of jealousy, but a lot of bit of like admiration for these kids who just have hope. I was on a TV show with The Rock. It was super cool. It was awesome. But nothing is better than having my little friend Sadie grab the magazine that I was in and show it off. That happiness, that face, that brought me to tears because I never felt that. That smile I never had at that age. I struggle to get that smile now, you know. And seeing this, that's what it's all about. So I am disabled, but I am not abled. I'm not weak or broken or useless or helpless or less than. I am strong, and I'm greater than my self-imposed limitations. I am is the second greatest phrase you could ever say to yourself. And the first is the word or words that you choose to follow. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would love to take questions if there's questions or anything, if Leanne wants to facilitate, but I am here and I'm here to help.
Chris, I'm trying to get in my cardio and get up back up to the
I
podium,
saw
friend.
that.
It's good to see you. Absolutely
You
good to see you,
too.
and thanks for being here. I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything that you want to ask. This is the central mic, so I was just going to repeat those questions. I just wanted to open it up and see if any of you all have thoughts, questions, anything that I can relay to Chris. We never want to talk in front of our peers. Yes, Carla. Okay, I'm going to do my best, Chris, because it's multi-layered. Here we go. The question is, as far as leaders, as individuals, how can we support others to really be the best that they can be and understand their authentic selves and really become those individuals? Is that good, Carla? All right.
So I have a framework about curiosity leadership versus certainty leadership. And a lot of people will say things like, oh, I have 30 years experience, so I know best. And I often counter that with, do you have 30 years experience or do you have 1 year of experience repeated 30 times? Just because you have gone through the time doesn't mean you have the experience. And to be a great leader, great leaders invite people to become their best selves. So instead of bulldozing someone and doing things for people or trying to constantly micromanage them, I ask questions. And I truly believe questions are the best possible form of leadership, whether it's Socratic questioning or open-ended questions. I ask them, how would you solve this? What do you think about this? Give them a platform to shine and to make mistakes. Because if you do everything for people, if you put your lens on everyone else, you're not creating other leaders. You're creating mini yous. And that's not what a leader does. That's what a boss does. So inviting people to be their authentic selves by asking questions and letting them shine and struggle is one of the best forms of leadership.
All right. Anyone else have a question? Yes. Just take your time. You're good. Okay. Okay. She's a new amputee, Chris. So
Okay.
we've got a question. She struggles with the mental piece of it, Chris, because she doesn't know how to do that. How do you overcome that when you're still realizing as an acquired or as a new individual with a new disability? How do we handle that?
So there's no one right way, and everyone's timeline is different. I experienced every wave of people with other disabilities saying I should have been more comfortable sooner and that I could be a potential bad role model for people seeing me hide my hand. But the reality of the human experience is your timeline is your timeline. The best thing I can say is whether it's with sickness, disease, amputation, losing partners, opportunities, You never lost you. Your value never changes because of your situation. It requires you to look internal and understand you are not what you have or what you don't have. You are you. And for people who might see you differently because of a physical appearance, whether that's a different haircut or an amputation, those people were never truly in your life from the beginning in the way that you thought they were. So that internal story, if we brought it down to basics, what I had to do was start with facts. I couldn't tell myself I was a monster because that is not a fact, that is a feeling. So if I reduced it to facts, what happened? I have three less fingers on my left arm and 4 inch shorter left arm. That is the facts. Is that good or bad? That's not facts. What's facts is this is how I am. Does that affect who I can be to other people? No. Does that affect my ability to love or to care? No. So why am I choosing to put myself in a negative situation because life happened? Your value is always your value. And if that's one thing you could take away, please do. And this goes for everyone, but especially you. If you ever need to talk, please reach out, whether it's Instagram or email. That I vow to be the person I never had growing up, and I sometimes wish I had another voice to talk to. So please feel free to reach out.
Thanks. Thanks. Any other questions or thoughts? Thoughts, questions? Oh, yes. Okay, the question is like, if you go back and you see those people, right, in your life, especially that girl, that was the big thing. Have those people said anything like, have you mended that? Have they, like, maybe you see them at a reunion, right? What does that look like now? Does it still look the same, or has any of that changed?
So there is one kid who used to make fun of me for being small, and he'd always like call me like Pipsqueak, and he was on the football team in high school, and I was in the band, you know. So uh, years later, being a professional bodybuilder and powerlifter, he ended up reaching out to me and asking for a workout program, and that was a pretty wild experience because I had a choice. I'm like, do I like completely just shame him for doing what he did? And I helped him, and he was very thankful of it because I recognized the position he was in. While it did negatively affect me, I can't imagine what he was going through too. And there's a certain point where, yes, we do have to hold people accountable and we set our limits. You know, we have our boundaries, but also growth is possible and change is possible for me. So it has to be possible for them too. There's no right or wrong way to do life, you know, like that's completely up to you. But for me, I I will always hold a little bit of contempt for that younger girl, Crystal, but I can't keep that same level of contempt for the grown version.
Okay. Anybody else? Please. First things and foremost, Chris, for really talking about all kinds of disabilities, right? But as we are talking about with invisible disabilities, how do we talk to someone who maybe doesn't have that support, or how do we, how do we handle those types of things as well? I'm just making sure I get that correct. All right.
So, unfortunately, people, if they can't see it, they don't believe it. And that's probably the most frustrating part about invisible illness and invisible disability. Like, my physical disability, you see it, it's very apparent. But arguably the hardest part is the type 1 diabetes. It's a minute by minute condition that I have to manage, and I don't look diabetic, which I hate the concept of even looking like an invisible illness. Education goes a long way. Whether it's fear or ignorance, both can be improved or reduced through education. But you can't educate an empty seat. If someone is unwilling to be educated or to be interested or curious, that's not a person that is worth my time or effort. And while that is unfortunate, it is a waste of time. And what I used to ask people if I got into a disagreement with someone, I would say, is there any version of this conversation where if you had the proper support or evidence that you would change your mind? And if they say no, I know this is no longer a productive conversation. If you are committed to a false narrative based on information you don't have, there's no point in me trying to force you to that narrative that you're unwilling to come to. So finding support groups is huge. I think that connection piece, finding people who are curious enough, prompting people to ask questions, maybe giving them the safety, the psychological safety of saying like, hey, I know not everyone knows about type 1 diabetes. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I think as people with invisible illnesses or disabilities or differences, we can do a better job of telling people where we are. Like, hey, I'm not the most comfortable talking about my hand, but if you do have a question, please just phrase it this way. So I'd be willing to answer. Helping guide people for your needs, I think, is vital. So letting people know how you receive information, it's such a great communication tactic, but also it kind of keeps you safe and comfortable too. So making sure you're communicative on what your needs are, as well as positioning them to feel safe enough to ask.
All right. Any other questions? Thoughts? Yeah, please. Sure. The question is it's a lot easier to advocate for other people, right, Chris, than it is for yourself. So how do you get to that place where you feel comfortable in advocating for you and not just others?
Love this question. How do you get comfortable doing anything? By doing it, by stumbling through it and doing it again. And repetition creates comfort. So whether it's confidence or comfort, I don't believe confidence is a feeling. I think it's a choice. So if you are willing to advocate for yourself once and stumble through it and feel uncomfortable, do it again and again. What we repeat becomes easier. And the problem is, it's one, easier to advocate for other people because it removes responsibility and involvement, and we can separate those feelings. But the reason we get so good at it is we do it so much that it becomes a skill. Imagine if you said, I want to become a professional basketball player, but you said, I'm not going to practice. Would you wonder why you're not as good? No, because you're like, well, you don't do it enough. Maybe if we started doing it more, we would get more comfortable with it. We would get better at it. And we would condition ourselves, silk, 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 milk, to advocate for ourselves. It does take repetition to create comfort and familiarity. I don't tell people to go outside of their comfort zone. I challenge people to slowly expand their comfort zone to include things like self advocacy, self ID, and confidence in general. Don't wait to feel confident, do it scared. Prove to yourself that you can, or we can use my cynicism, prove that you can't. If you say you can't, prove it to me. Chances are you can.
Any other questions or thoughts? Yes. Her grandson was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 18 months old. Okay? The doctor always said he's a person with diabetes or not a diabetic. So she always talked to them, and it was wonderful for their family that she said it that way.
I think person first language is always going to be preferred, especially when you're talking about someone else's condition or situation. People first language is vital.
Definitely. So now that he's in first grade, oh, preschool, I'm sorry, I'm making him older than he is. I apologize there. I do. Okay. They were not going to say anything to his classmates unless they asked Chris about his diabetes. It was the teacher's decision. Okay. Okay. What do you think about that as far as that decision, Chris? And then how does everyone support him as he's going through school?
I think it's always, again, no universal fix to an individual problem. I've met some kids who are just super comfortable educating and talking about it, and they wear it as a badge of honor. And I've met some kids that are a little less comfortable with it. It's okay to be less comfortable with wearing your difference as a badge of honor. Not everyone has to do that. Not everyone has to go on stages and speak. But when we view it as a thing that hurts us or impacts us, that's where we have to at least work through it. So not everything has to be super public. I think it should be on the kid and the parent with the kid to discuss what they feel most comfortable with. And it's not always everyone's business. I don't go around telling everyone my origin story of my disability, but if someone is interested, I am open to telling them. Now, dynamic life, there are some days where I'm struggling and I don't feel like inspiring people. I don't feel like being motivating or educational. That's okay. That is okay. Dynamic life, good days, bad days, ups, downs, that is completely normal. It is not your job to educate everyone else, but it is an opportunity to do it if you're comfortable. So I think that's completely okay as long as the kid is relatively involved or the parent is mostly involved until the kid can make that decision.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? Silence. Okay. Well, I am actually going to close this out really quick. And first and foremost, Chris, let's give Chris a round of applause. Thank you so much, my friend, for being here. It is so great to see you. And thank you for being here with all the crazy weather and working with me to be able to see you today. It is great to see you. We really appreciate you being here with us, even virtually, for the powerful message that you shared about resilience, determination, and challenging what people think is definitely possible. I also want to thank you again for being here and taking part in Disability Awareness Day at UND and just opening up a dialogue and conversation surrounding disability. Please take some time this afternoon to check out the posters and also the organizations that will be here and just spend some time with us today. Learn about the exceptional resources in our community as well as on our campus. And definitely and finally, be sure to spend some time viewing our fabulous posters. I know I'm going to plug the posters twice, but we have a lot of students and a lot of individuals on campus who've done these, so check them out. Thank you all for being here today. And from Leanne, thank you so much for the time that you've spent. I hope that you have had time to get to know that table and to spend some time with friends for self-care. And we'll look forward to another wonderful event next year. But before that, we will check out the rest of the day. Thank you so much, everyone, and we're dismissed.
Thank you, everyone.